Leveling up feels so lonely, but it doesn't have to. Hey guys, it's Andy with Mindset Matters More. And today I am thrilled to welcome Samantha Gomez to the show. Samantha is a brave woman who often challenged societal and familial expectations. Through many profound life transitions, she's discovered her authentic self. And now she guides others to do the same, helping them build lives that align with their souls rather than external voices. As a life and holistic coach, she supports people in reconnecting with their true selves to pursue the lives they truly desire. As a career counselor, she helps uncover deeper vocations and callings. She also provides fun, interactive English and Spanish classes tailored to build confidence for interviews, meetings, and overcoming language shyness, always meeting people where they're at. Canadian born with Colombian heritage, Samantha recently gained residence there and now lives in Medellin, Colombia. She loves yoga, dancing, singing, travel, nature, and diving into cultures, psychology, ancestral traumas, and healing. Samantha deeply believes in our interconnectedness and human potential. We're more powerful than we know, and sometimes we just need guidance to find inner peace and joy. That's her mission, to be that light. Samantha, it is so amazing to have you on the show today. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much, Andy. It's a privilege to be on the show. I'm so happy that we met because we share so many common values and our true desire to be of service to humanity and to, to leave our little grain of sand, as they say in Spanish, where, you know what, we can contribute to a greater good.
Oh, absolutely. And that actually is exactly where I want to dive into. So often it can feel like leveling up, you know, becoming more, leaning into your authentic self. It can feel like it's going to be a lonely path. And so a few months ago, I said a prayer and I said, I want to meet more people like me. I want to meet more people who are aligned with my values, with where I'm going. And what does that mean? What does that look like? And in the past couple of months, I have met so many powerful women just like you. And so I want to start there. What do you think it means to call in people who are similar to yourself?
So I think probably the most important part, which is the part we often leave for last, is we have to know ourselves before we call in the people. And so I think in my earlier years, I think my attention was so focused on the external and validation of the external, all the expectations from family, from society. And so I think a lot of it was, okay, who is Samantha at her core, and what do I desire? What's that inner calling that I've always had when I shut out those voices? And so I think that our who we're meant to be with in community, I think that shifts as soon as we sort of hone in and become comfortable and really truly appreciate who that person is that we are. And that way that's the only way we can really align with those people that are meant to come across our path and then do great work together, like you and I met, right?
No, right. I think that's an important piece is that actually you have to know yourself to know who are the people that you want to call in, right? There are so many stories out there of like, even though rags to riches story about like, oh, you forgot where you came from and you're going to forget about the people who like helped you when you were, you know, out and destitute. And it feels almost like it's not that you're leaving behind people, but you're leaving behind even a piece of yourself because that piece of you no longer aligns, right? And so trying to find that alignment within yourself, how does somebody start that?
It's interesting you touch on this because I've had quite a few of my posts be about transition this year and specifically about that and how, in the past, for example, the indigenous tribes, when someone was going through a significant transition or they were perhaps going to be given a different position in the tribe, they were given time aside to mourn and to let go of that old chapter, that old persona, that old avatar, let's say, that they were playing, and recognize in that emptiness
Oh,
of in between, right? Um, who they are and the value of them just being. And so I think there's so much to be said about that, that we're so keen to rush into the new that
mm,
we don't stop to sort of take note and anchor, okay, but I'm no longer that person. I'm sort
mm,
of in this intermediate stage that's uncomfortable, and I'm not quite there at the new. And so
yeah.
I think it's so important to mourn that part and also recognize that who we were, we can honor them, we
Mm,
can thank them for the lesson, but we also cannot be that same person while welcoming in the new. And also, one of the challenging parts is part of our community is going to fade away. And
yeah.
that's not what a lot of times we're prepared for, nor are we educated for. Vishen Lakiani, we both are Mind Valley coaches, and he speaks about this, that you know what, it's scary to go through change because as we elevate in our consciousness, as we connect to our inner selves more so, and let's say our own consciousness, it's gonna shift people in our corner, and it's gonna make them uncomfortable because we're no longer that person. And so there's a loss for them as well. So I think part
Mm,
of it is acknowledging where we're at, acknowledging the fact that we can part with that former part of ourselves and say, thank you for that learning. I honor that person, and now I honor where I'm at, and that way, when we're ready to take on that position, and we need help, right? Like in those older traditions through the tribe, they would send that person out in solitude, stripped of all their titles in who they were in the tribe, but they were also given spiritual support from the shamans,
mm,
from the leaders, from the chiefs of the tribe. And so they looked to that support for guidance, and they also went within and connected to that higher self, that higher connection. And so then they were welcomed into that new position. And so I think part of it is we have to recognize what stage we're at, and also know that any new change, any new Samantha, so to speak, any new Andy is going to be uncomfortable while we figure it out.
yeah. And you touch on an important word, I think, mourn. And it has such like a negative connotation. I mean, you don't want to be in mourning, right? You don't want to have that loss. But yet the process of mourning is integral when it comes to being able to step into new ways of being, into your authentic self, right? Into this new evolution of yourself. We're not really conscious of mourning. We're not conscious of like, I needed to mourn this. And so we kind of just evolve without having gone through the process. Do you ever like work with your clients and like helping them to mourn past versions of themselves? Or, are we just looking at the current version that we're trying to step into for that mourning period? Or do you look to, even the evolution of like child to adulthood, or, into womanhood? Do you take a look at that stuff with your clients?
Definitely. I think that's so important. Like you said, mourning is not something that's, let's say, a favorite chapter of people's lives, but I think it can also be very beautiful. And so part of it is honoring that person that we were, but also honoring the people that made up that chapter. So, for example, if we've had loss, whether it's the separation of a spouse, or we've lost someone in death, it's important to look back and also to mourn who we were, right? I miss being part of that partnership. I miss the good times where, you know what? I decorated our home for Christmas and all those things. And I can tell you, sometimes we can hold ourselves back in it's almost like a punishing ourselves when we don't mourn.
Mm,
I'm not gonna celebrate Christmas this year. And, and that is a personal choice, but at the same time, we're neglecting ourselves of that joy, of those Christmas lights, of whatever
Mm.
that means. And so, as much as it's important to honor that stage of mourning, how we do so, we need to make sure that we're not punishing ourselves through the process. And so I remember talking to a client and them sharing that, you know what, they hadn't celebrated Christmas. They hadn't gotten all decked out because their mother that had passed on, Christmas was everything to her. And so
Mm.
it brought back those memories. But when they actually allowed themselves to celebrate, to decorate, to get into the festive season, it was actually like those happy memories of their mother came back, and they almost
Mm.
felt her presence as they decorated. And so we don't realize that through that morning can be those glimpses of joy, those happy memories where we can just sit in them. And yes, we can cry. And yes, we can say, oh my goodness, that's no longer who I was, but I cherish that. And mourn in a way where, we're not in that mode where we need to punish ourselves or we need to neglect that happiness and joy. Because when we think about it, that person in their highest consciousness wants us to be happy, wants us to be overjoyed, doesn't want us to neglect celebrating the things that once brought us mutual joy.
Mm. Mm.
And so I think I do honor that space, whether it's the loss of a job. Oftentimes, when I'm working with people, they've been laid off, we sit together and we mourn that part. What do you miss most of that team? Tell me. And you know what? Allow themselves that space to cry, to share. You know what? We were a family. I feel completely disconnected from that team. And now that the company's gone out of business, I feel completely at a loss. And so oftentimes we don't recognize it's not just leaving a workplace, it's often the loss of community. It's the loss of who I was in that space, that I was the person that I took care of everyone and I resolved, people came to me and now I feel at a loss. I don't feel needed. And so
Mm.
opening up those chapters helps us to also move beyond them in time in a healthy way, not where we lock it up in a box and we don't talk about it, but we actually allow that mourning, those feelings to flow so we can let them go and be ready to take on the new, to welcome in the new energetically first, and then having the new come and transpire in our reality.
Oh, and I love the way that you frame it as like an honoring of that which we've lost. It's not, okay, it's done. I got to get over it. It's like admiring, everything that has happened, everything that has been, integrating it in a newer, powerful way into who we currently are, the version of ourselves, and understanding ourselves better. I know when I work with clients, we do a lot of inner child work, and I've never really called it mourning. I've always just said, we have to appreciate that part of us, but it no longer exists. Like that way which we operated as children, as teens, when we were, at our most vulnerable. It's time to put those to rest. It's time to evolve from there. And I never thought of it as mourning, but like you just said it so beautifully that it's a way to honor what we've been through. And do you think that in your own evolution that you have been able to not only mourn, but integrate pieces of yourself that were before? I know you have an amazing story that we can get into a little bit, but are those pieces of you well and done, or have they integrated into who you are now?
I think every day is an opportunity for us to rediscover the parts of ourselves that we locked away, maybe because
Mm.
at one point people told us it wasn't okay. And so I find myself, regularly, especially through this move that, I'm in a new culture, I'm in a new dynamic, and I'm a foreigner, and as much as yes, my Colombian heritage is there, I will always be
Mm.
a foreigner. And part of it is, you know, in Canada, I had something similar where even though I was born there, sometimes, and I wrote an article about it, people would ask me, where are you really from? Yes, I have a Canadian accent and I speak English. native English, but my appearance didn't always seem to fit in with people's
Mm.
expectations of what Canadian looked like.
Hmm.
So part of it is, I think, acknowledging that we can bring parts of us back that perhaps we were uncomfortable with. And part of it for me was recognizing that, here, Canada is always going to be a part of me, and I love that part of me, and it's who made me who I am. And so at my essence, part of it is understanding that not everyone's going to be comfortable with me and what I bring to the table, and that's okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I think, like, recently, I actually reached out to a friend of mine who wants to do a sort of exchange. So he was saying, can you teach me English? What can we do as an exchange? And I thought, "Ah, I've always loved music. Um, in my youth, I tried to learn different instruments and it really didn't hit. But now that, I enjoy singing as a hobby, and so I thought I'd love to learn how to play the guitar. And so my friend plays the guitar. He's very gifted at it. And I just sort of, sprung the idea to him and said, "Hey, why don't you teach me how to play the guitar and I'll teach you English?" And so, that's something I'm looking forward to in 2026 is opening my life and my heart up to music. And it's so healthy for the brain as well. New studies have come out on how much it helps us to learn to play an instrument, and so it's something that I want to challenge myself to. And I think, for the audience and those out there, what are those aspects that, as a child or as a youth, you used to love? Maybe it was making crafts, or maybe it was, you know, martial arts or something that you left behind and that oh, yes, well, I used to do that. But if it brought you joy, tap into that, especially with being creative. It helps us so much to open up and challenge ourselves.
Oh, and every time I talk to you, I just hear more and more of my story within you, being Guatemalan. But like, I was born here in America, and so when I go to Guatemala, I'll say, "Oh, I'm Guatemalan." They're like, "No, you're American." But then when I'm here, and they'll say, "Oh, where are you from?" They're not asking me because of how I look. They're asking me because I speak Spanish, and so I'll say, "Oh, I'm Guatemalan," but then it'll be like, but I'm not, but I'm American. And so, like, what do I identify as? And the calling to music. Like, I'm somebody who I love teaching myself stuff. So I picked up a little bit of piano, a little bit of um, guitars. Like, I was playing guitar for the church for a while, and just like how powerful calling people in who are very similar can be. So now that you're transitioning into this era of more creativity with the music, how do you think that that actually plays into bringing out more of yourself? Like, I know you said that you've been called to it because like that's who you were before. So how is it that is it like a recalling in a piece of you that was there when you were younger that you want to explore, or is this like a new part of your creativity that like how would you classify it?
I think it's twofold, Andy. So I think part of it, I gave a podcast previously where I shared sort of my story, how I left the cult, and it was a very oppressive religious environment. And so in that environment, I used to sing and I loved singing. People complimented my
Mm.
ability to sing. And along with leaving that context, I actually stopped singing for a number of years. And every time I thought about it, I would cry and I would get all upset. And so I thought to myself one day, why? Why did I stop? You know, and as much as I tried to sing, I didn't have the strength. For some reason, my voice would not come out. So I hired a singing coach. And, that wonderful coach, Art is his name in Toronto, Art Nefsky, he helped me to gain the courage, but also to find my voice. And along with that loss, why it wouldn't come out was there was a lot of pain that I had to work out through my throat chakra. And so
Mm.
that was releasing that pain and also inviting myself the opportunity, gifting myself the opportunity to rediscover singing in a different way. And so I think that the guitar playing, because I never played an instrument per se, I just kind of played around on a little organ I used to have. But that guitar is sort of the newest evolution. Now, how did it help me? I have to say, reincorporating singing back into my life helped me to have courage to have difficult conversations, to face
Mm,
the fear, because I face the fear of singing, especially in public, um, at different events, parties, that kind of thing. And so it helped me to have a braver, more confident voice when I had to speak up, whether it's for what's right, and speak out for the atrocities that we're seeing in the world, where maybe it's not the, convenient narrative that people want us to
mm,
share, whether it's at work or whether it's in our own government that they want us to sort of support or be silent. And so it's helped me very much to find my voice and to
mm,
recognize that what we keep silent is actually what continues to, you know, display itself in the world. And so we were given our voice for a reason, whether it's
mm,
to set boundaries, whether it's to speak up for, the vulnerable, whether it's to share words of praise and love to others, right? And using that gift
mm.
wisely and consciously, we can speak up and advocate for others in a conscious way without expressing hatred or bigotry or, and understanding that there's hurt on all sides.
First, I want to commend you for, you said leaving a cult like that. It sounds massive and transformational, and having maybe in a sense to redefine who you are in a matter of like days, weeks, months, trying to just come from something that is so structured, oppressive, that it's very much like, okay, I go from this to what could be easily construed as like no rules, like, and then having to bridge that gap, finding your voice. And so I just first want to acknowledge you and the amazing power and strength that you have gone through. Like, I've heard your story and it's just so powerful. Along your journey post cult, would you say that there was like a moment or just something that just clicked for you that was like, yeah, no, I'm supposed to move beyond that, or like a massive insight that you had post cult that really reaffirmed that you were on the right path?
I think part of it was after I took my career and work counseling program at George Brown College in Toronto, and I went through the program and meeting different clients and just, their gratitude and them saying, you know what, there was no one else that could have helped me. You saw me, I felt seen. You changed and shifted my path, but with your guidance, right? And I think that part of it is I recognized I would have never met these people. I would even here coming to Colombia, I've had some of my clients that, have broken down and cried in gratitude, and it's been so humbling because I recognize that there is no way I would have come across and crossed paths with these folks because I was so sheltered. I was not supposed to engage with the outside world with the exception of preaching door to door. And so, um, for me, it's been a beautiful experience to meet my soul tribe, to meet my soul family in places, and they practice different beliefs, also spiritual practices, whether it's taking ancestral medicine or different practices that were clearly forbidden. And so, and the people that have marked my life as spiritual guides throughout, because I did seek help. I did have people that helped me to navigate and to help me recognize that, despite leaving the cult, there were some values that I could take from it. There were some
Mm,
values that were innate that I was born with, and that I could still cultivate that very strong relationship that I had with God, with the universe, because that never left me. That actually was what guided me, but I didn't need an oppressive religion to dictate how that relationship would be or should be. And I
mm,
think that if I can share a message is Everyone's going to tell you what your relationship with our highest source of life should be, but it's something extremely intimate. It's different if they give you tools maybe on how to connect if we've forgotten but I think it's a very intimate thing, because how you connect may be different from how I connect, but it's no less magical and spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think really what I have found to be the most important thing is that through our own story, we're calling in the people who we can help, right? I think a lot of times just seeing people online through social media, which is obviously like a bad place to get my information from. But, when you're on social media and you see people not really sharing deep, like into their own story, it's kind of just like, I can help you with this. This is what I can teach. This is what I do. And there's no real connection to, okay, but why? Like, how is it that you can do this? Like, and to me, that's like the most attractive quality in, a coach or a therapist or a mentor or a guide or whoever it is that you're looking for. But that story that you are attracting people to, it's a powerful one, first of all, but also because I think it is rooted in some very powerful spiritual principles that yes, the transformation that like you're giving to people is massive, right? And it goes beyond just the surface level, whatever it is. It really truly transforms people from, hey, you can go from really extreme situations to living the life that you absolutely love and desire. So, how have you been able to step into that power more recently?
I'm glad you brought this up because it's so important. I think, again, we need community. Since I've been here in Colombia, it's been so powerfully demonstrated to me that we need community. And so I remember, like you mentioned, people aren't sharing their stories on social media. And I'll share with you a bit about why I didn't for the longest time, because I mean, it's a long time. I left the cult in 2003, and I didn't speak out until oof, maybe 2021, I think it was.
Mm,
Um, I started a little bit in 2019, and it was thanks to my friend Mark, who helped me. He was my branding partner. He helped me with, identifying my brand. And when he met with me, the first meeting, he sort of said, what's your story? Oh, well, and I didn't want to get into it. And I didn't want to, I didn't want to get into it because of fear. I'm going to be honest with you. There are ramifications when you leave a cult, an oppressive cult, and there's a lot of hate that can come towards you. And um, I was concerned about, not only, any ramifications for my mother that is still part of the faith, but also, um, you know, the fact that social media can be quite cruel. And so, I shared my story with him and he said, that's powerful. You don't know how many people you can help. And it took me a bit. It took me a bit to sort of be prepared. And so I think that it's not something that someone can rush. They really do have to be ready. I have to say that significantly more people welcomed my message and were uplifted by the story. But I did get a couple messages, very hateful.
mm,
And, I even reported them to the authorities because they were sort of borderline threats, veiled
yeah.
threats. And it was something that I was then prepared, I had been prepared for. And even when I shared it with my friend Mark, who helped me um, with, and he works for Flyprint. If anyone needs a great Mark John Stewart, if anyone needs a great person to help them with their brand and their website. But he even recognized, wow, like I can't believe that people can be so cruel, right? And so as much as yes, it's great to put our story up out there, we need to be prepared that we are strong within ourselves to do so, because there's a lot of I'm just going to say it. There's a lot of cowards that they hide behind the screen and say things they would never say to someone in person.
Hmm.
That it only speaks to their own self-loathing.
Hmm.
Part of that is understanding that only someone who self-loathes and hurts deeply or is triggered by our own example of freedom and chasing, wanting to chase after our own best life and leave what doesn't serve us. Something is triggering it in you if you've got to go and haunt someone that's living differently, right? And
Hmm.
so I think part of it is acknowledging that we are also doing them a service, believe it or not, because
Hmm.
if it didn't trigger something in them, they wouldn't be paying attention, they'd be living their own lives. And so
Right.
part of that is it's not only those that we encourage by our example that say, hey, you're great, but also those that we trigger and it's like, ah, I can't stand her, or why has she done that? Or she's this person and she's living an immoral life because I'm not, conforming to those rules. And part of that is again knowing who you are and knowing, what, no one else is in my shoes, no one else can judge me. And if my conscience is clear before God, before my maker, then that's all that's necessary. I don't do harm to others. I move along in the best way I can consciously, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because sometimes our story, yeah, it triggers them, but it challenges them. It challenges their way of seeing the world. It challenges their view of what is real in this dimension, right? And so, calling that forward, I think, I'm so glad, like, I don't know if it's just me, but like I see a lot of people now talking about the art of storytelling, about telling your story and being impactful. And yeah, you don't want to like verbally vomit like everything that you've been in every single situation, but being open, vulnerable, and honest, I think it's going to not only attract the people that you need to surround yourself with, but clients. It's going to attract the people who you, even a partner or people who you just want to communicate with on a soul level. And like just the fact that you're sharing your story, I'm grateful for it because I know I see so much of myself in your story. And I'm pretty sure that's why we called to each other on a soul level.
For sure.
Um, we're wrapping up right now. Tell me, what are some things that you're currently working on? How can people get in touch with you? Like, what is a good way to connect with Coach Samantha?
Thank you. Well, what I'm working on right now, I'm actually doing a lot of work on closing out this cycle. So, 2025 for many has been a heavy year, and I encourage you all, instead of jumping right into, okay, 2026 New Year's resolutions, give yourself the grace to, honor what, what challenges you've been through that you didn't think you would make it through. And honor what strengths, what were the lessons that you learned through it, what strengths came through, your resilience, who was there in your corner, and also honor who left. I think it's important. We don't often honor those that have left our lives and send them off with blessings and love. Not all friendships, not all relationships are meant to follow us through the course of our life, but it doesn't diminish the value that they had while they were here. And so for me, I think I'm going to be talking a lot. Want to, talk a lot about the journey of transition and honoring those parts of ourselves that and others that, we can cherish what we had, you know, while moving forward. And I think part of it is we're so quick on wanting the new. And so I'm going to be wanting to help people to sort of take time because I don't think in this mass, social media, we're not taking enough time to reflect on where we are now, who we are now, and also how we can build ourselves up for so we're prepared for the challenges that come because we know life here we signed up for it, right? Life is
Mhm.
going to have its ups and downs. And so to say, okay, 2026 is going to be the best year where we're not going to have the same headaches, we can't promise that. And I think the more
Mhm.
realistic we are, the more resilience we can build to know that whatever challenges have come up so far, we've been able to navigate them. It's building those tools in our toolbox. And so that's what I invite people to, examine. If you're moved to work with me, please contact me. For 2026, I really encourage people to, you know, be able to see, okay, carry forward what they want to in the way of lessons learned, all the strength that they've gained, and also acknowledge that, you know what, they're always supported. Here we have La Noche de las Velitas on the 7th of December, and it's where Colombia, we all light candles, all families in the evening, we light candles and we set intentions. And it's a reminder that the light is always with us. And so in our darkest moments, sometimes we tend to isolate, sometimes we forget that we're not alone. And that light is always within us and it's always offered to us. So, think when you think of your loneliest times, there's always been someone
Mhm.
that, whether they phoned, whether it was, someone that you turned to for help, whether it was someone in a grocery store that offered, to pay for something that, maybe you didn't have enough money to pay for groceries that day. And so you'd be surprised. And all that magic is how the universe supports us. And so to know that in 2026, we're all going to be supported. I also want to speak to women. I'm going to be doing more work for professional women that, like us, question the status quo, are not comfortable with the guidelines that we had set perhaps by our ancestors, by our family, by society, that by this stage we should be here. This is
Mhm.
how our life is meant to look like. Because I think that as women, naturally we give life to whatever we put our energy into. So we want to make sure that we're putting that energy into something that speaks to us, and then it can flourish. And then that's where we put our little drop of the ocean into this magnificent world that we live in. Because I really truly believe there's a lot of good being done, Andy, but we're being
Mhm.
fooled by social media, by the news, to think that, you know what, it's all going wrong. And actually, there's a
Mhm.
lot of good being done in the world. It just doesn't make the news.
Oh, so powerful. And what an amazing message to finish off on, right? Is that where there is a lot that is happening that is good, and we can find that within ourselves. I'm so grateful to have had you on here today, Samantha. I'm so grateful that we got to share space and time together. I look forward to witnessing your evolution, and hopefully when I go down to Guatemala, then maybe somehow you and I will get to link up and maybe I'll go visit you or something, because I definitely am being pulled into your universe. I know that for a fact.
Colombia welcomes you, darling.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Love you.
Thank
Bye.
you.